All right, welcome to Key Ministries Disability Ministry Video Roundtable for June 2021. Our subject today is Beyond Ramps, Characteristics of Disability Inclusive Churches. My name is Beth Golick from Key Ministry, and I am just delighted to have all these ministry leaders on our roundtable today. I know this is a topic that I'm really excited to talk about, to hear from you about. I have some ideas of things I want to talk about, or I want us to talk about, but this is really a time for you all to share your experiences, ask questions, and let's really learn from each other today. So the point in choosing this particular topic, it's a little selfish on my part. I want to get your input on this. I'm really interested in hearing what it looks like to be a welcoming church, to be a disability inclusive church. And so whether you are here today because you're a ministry leader and your church does this really well, or you think your church could do better with this, or you're a person with a disability who attends a church that does this really well or could do better, I want to hear what your experience is, what your input is, and let's really brainstorm what this looks like. So I'll just open it up. Would anybody like to get started by sharing, something that they feel is a key characteristic of a disability welcoming, disability inclusive church, either because they have experienced that, it's part of their church, or it needs to be part of their church. Would anybody like to get us started? Looking around.
I can say something to that because we have a daughter with a disability, and we have seen both sides of the fence. We have seen churches and been a part of churches that have been extremely welcoming, and we have seen those who really don't, they're not ungodly, but they're not welcoming either. And I think it's just a matter of not having that on their radar and it not being an important thing for them. But the church we're in right now has been extremely helpful to our daughter, who's 26 and looks like she's about 12. And I would say that the biggest thing for her has been that they have let her serve. That opportunities to be in drama things that they're doing, to be serving in as a greeter at the front door, and a myriad of other things. But that's been the most important thing to her.
Okay, great. So that's a great way to get us kicked off. Thank you, Julie. So so this is clearly, beyond ramps. Like, we're not talking about just getting people into the building. We're talking about really utilizing everybody in the church and letting them serve into their gifting, and helping them discover what their gifting is and serving. And we actually I think we did a roundtable on that a couple months ago, maybe. So such an important topic, and that's such a key characteristic that we should all be striving for sure. Bob, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to agree with and just confirm what was already said. That would be my suggestion, just for myself and other people with disabilities, is having someone from the church come over, say hi when you're first there, and then give the person the opportunity to participate in some of the other groups that are going on, find their interest, and then make them feel welcome. I think the architectural things really fall to the background. The biggest conversion needs to be having the congregation be open and welcome, and the rest seems to follow suit.
Yeah, that's great. And so I want to come back to that. There's a couple hands that are raised, but remind me if I don't come back to that. I want to talk about the congregation. Ryan.
Yeah, I loved what Julie said with serving, but I feel like that's symptomatic of so many other things that are happening in the church. Like, you can't just have people serving and shortcut it to being a welcoming church, but what is required to get to the point where you can have people with profound disabilities that are having those gifts sought for them. Like if, somebody's got clear talents, it's not hard to find a place of service. But if you've got someone who's nonverbal, you actually have to have a church who's going to be seeking where they can serve, which requires so many other things to get up to that point. And I think a lot of them, like I'm starting at a new church really soon. And the thing that attracted me to this church and why I think it has been so successful at becoming a genuinely welcoming and accessible church is that the leadership is the one that sets the tone. They talk about it from the front of saying, if we've been called to disciple people with disabilities and there aren't that many people with disabilities in the church, we need to figure out why. And so they start saying yes, and then figuring out what it takes for that to happen. They're saying they're not coming to our church. Why aren't they coming to our church? Oh, it's because we don't have ramps and things like those peripheral things. But then once they get here, what's the goal? And it's the leadership that's driving that and saying, if this isn't happening, we're the ones that are going to be tasked with not only getting people with disabilities into our church, but having them be full members of the church and find their place of service, because we believe in faith that if they're in Christ, that they've been given a gift by God for the benefit of the church. And if they're not using that gift, the church itself is impoverished from that. And that, I feel like, you use the term kind of a lot, but it kind of closes the loop, because you can have us serving them as a one-way relationship where we do a program for those people and do things for them. But if they're not finding their place of service, it's not genuinely integrated. But
Amen. Boy, Ryan just pretty much mic dropped it. I think we can all go home now. That was awesome. Thank you. That was great. Wow, so many good things there. I will definitely be going back and listening to this recording later. Thank you, Ryan. That's great. Doc.
Yeah, I completely agree with what's been said with everyone. And I'd say, in order to be an inclusive church, first off, it comes back to, having disability become part of the RNA of the church, your DNA in the church. And that takes time. How does that happen? By education. And it is the job of everyone on this call and everyone that will ever watch this. You are called not just to run a ministry, but to also educate the entire staff and the rest of the church. And it's a continual education. And that's how you can help become inclusive, and teach every ministry how they need to be able to welcome and how their ministries can do that. And so just example, I went with our church, I did our training for how to be a volunteer with individuals with special needs, not just for our students and our children's ministry, but I then did that with our entire First Impressions team, our security team. And one of the things I always tell them is, especially today, if you ever see, especially an elementary age child or a teen who's misbehaving, you got to immediately assume that's going to be autism. It's not misbehavior because they're being a turd. It's autism because of the numbers today. And realize that and treat that. And the day after we went through that training and showed them how to do it, we have a special place for visitors to park. We had a family that parked there for the first time. And again, anyone with a child with special needs knows transitioning is hard. So that makes it difficult to go through things. They had a child, elementary child, having a hard time getting out of the car, couldn't do it. The security guy, parking lot attendant, just walked out, started talking to the parents, was enough time to distract them, which then got them out. He walked them in, found out it was their first time at the church, and said, hey, we have a great children's ministry, we have student ministry, we offer a special needs ministry. And that's when they said, oh, well, Johnny here has autism. He's like, great, let's come in, we'll get you checked in. And then they called our team and we came in and met them. And then again, trying to be welcoming, my very first question to them wasn't, tell me all about your child, tell me what I need to know, how can we take care of the behaviors? It's a simple question. Tell me something wonderful about your child. And that all of a sudden, parents will always start crying because they've never been asked that. And then we were able to walk them into the room and take them everywhere else. And that particular family, by the time I walked them to the sanctuary, mom's crying, and her little statement was, Doc, I don't care if your pastor says that Satan is on the throne of God, this is our new home church, because no one has ever welcomed my child from beginning to end like this. That's what you want for the DNA, but it takes a lot of hard work with education from every single area and constantly preaching it, constantly teaching it. And when you see someone not doing it, it's our job to speak up and say, hey, here's how you can do it better. And so that they can learn, because realize people might be doing it wrong because they don't understand it. And we're not going to offend them by doing it. If we really want to be better, we'll step up and we'll be the voice for our families and help them see how they can do it. But that's what we have to do. We have to be able to tell the other ministries how to do it. Because again, a disability ministry is not just children's ministry. It's not just student ministries. It is every single ministry. And it's the only ministry where you truly minister to the entire family and every aspect of it and every aspect of the church. And so it takes that education that's going to be ongoing, and you're the biggest cheerleader you can be for the family.
Yeah, great. Thanks. I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding as you're talking, Doc. Thank you. Ryan is sharing in the chat, I don't care what your pastor says, show how powerful an evangelistic opportunity a welcoming church is. Doc, the welcoming alone attracts people who may not even be looking for God. That is so true. And I know any church on here who hosts respite events that are open to the community, I can guarantee you that you now have families that attend your church because they were welcomed in such a big way at your respite events. And they kind of lean in and think, okay, I could check this out. So great points all around. So when Robert earlier talked about, like he mentioned the congregation, and now Doc has kind of talked about, educating the staff, and Ryan mentioned the importance of having leadership on board. I kind of want to just chat about what are some ways that your church has kind of raised awareness and acceptance and an appreciation for being a more welcoming church. What are some of the ways that has happened? And I have some in mind, but does my question even make sense? Does anybody want to?
Yeah, I'll
It
speak.
does.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
I think Sandra, and then somebody, maybe it was Robert. Sandra.
Yeah, I think it was Bob. So I serve in the state of Texas for the Southern Baptist of Texas Convention. And a couple of years ago, they put, and I know the wording, we can get into a side conversation about the wording. I'm going to use the wording that we use for the thing. So we have Special Needs Ministry Sunday coming up in July, and it's going to be an annual event for our Southern Baptist of Texas churches. And so we're kind of marketing that as a celebration of special needs families. We're using it as a way to recruit volunteers in churches that have existing ministries, and we are using it as an outreach. So we have a video that can be played in all the churches, and I talk from Luke 14 about how the church is incomplete if we don't have everybody at the table, and how that takes a whole church culture to make that shift and to be welcoming. And so this is the first year that we're doing it because COVID messed our plans up last year, but it's really exciting. It's really exciting to see how different churches are applying that message. And like I was on a call yesterday where she's having lessons for the adult Sunday school classes, youth Sunday school classes, and children's ministry classes that all go along with this idea of inclusion and accessibility. So, I mean, I'm longing for a day that we don't have to have a special event calendar, but until we get there, I think it's really exciting and we get to set the tone for that. Like I'm trying to kind of spread that message of celebration, inclusion, accessibility, celebrating the gifts that people with disabilities bring, instead of, well, look at us who are serving and let's celebrate them. No, we're celebrating the diversity of the body. So
That's great.
We're excited about it.
Good. I can't wait to hear a report on how that goes. And that's this.
It's July 11th. So
July
it's the
11th.
second
Okay.
Sunday in July.
Okay.
Is what it'll be each year.
Okay. Cool. All right. Excellent. Bob, do you have something to share?
Yes, a couple of suggestions would be, one of the things that I did was go to the council of my local church and present to them, asking them to be aware of making all of the groups inclusive, since the council consists of all the various groups from uh, religious education on up to facilities, and making them aware. The second thing we've been doing on an annual basis is that we would have a church picnic, and prior to that, the service would be for celebrating persons with disabilities, and then having the church picnic thereafter, and give the opportunity for the families to come in, and then during the picnic, they would give the rest of the congregation, the rest of the families, an opportunity to meet the family, meet the kids, etc. That's been a great thing. And when it comes to the education, I guess I would suggest that you primarily concentrate on three things that I do know for certainly with adults, it's always been a problem, is that as you're educating them, make sure that one, we dispel those misnomers about disability versus sin or anything else. Two, that the person with a disability, it shouldn't be set aside as something virtuous or anything else. And three, set aside the misnomer or the propensity for people to treat the person as a charity, as a sort of an activity within itself. I've run across that where I've been one to a church, and then they were all willing to help me, but not really include me. And I think you have to dispel those three things. In working with other adults across the country, I know that's the propensity for other churches. So as you provide education, I would bear those three things in mind. Thank you.
Right. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, the whole idea of, we're serving them as opposed to serving together. So that's a great reminder. A couple things in the chat, so let me go through those. So Sandra shared the link to the event that she talked about. It's on the state convention website for the Southern Baptist Texas Convention. So that's sbtexas.com/event. You could probably then navigate from there. Doc says, help senior leadership learn how to accept the families with special needs and what the needs are by having one of your families invite the senior pastor and his family over for dinner, and pray that your child has a normal or even bad night so they can see what life is really like. This will be eye-opening. And then talk through how hard it is to go to church and how important it is for special needs ministry to meet the family's needs. This has changed many churches I have worked with and even opened the eyes of the most closed-minded senior leadership. And Ryan says, that's so cool that it's happening at a denominational level. Sandra, a huge win. Yeah, I agree with that. Trace, you have your hand up.
I do, and I'm backtracking just a tiny touch, but just talking about encouraging our members of our disability community to be the ones serving. We've been getting together on a Wednesday night, and we decided for the summer that we were going to watch a video series. And so we decided as a group to open up the invitation to anybody in our church who wanted to come. So we're actually hosting, our ministry is actually hosting an all church, well, not all church, but whoever wants to come, summer opportunity. So that's been just really fun, because there's a giving, there's an inviting others into our space instead of us being invited into their space. So that's been really a great experience for all of us.
That's cool. Let's see, another point of view, parent point of view, on the thing I read earlier from Doc. Great idea with the dinner, but many parents are already exhausted and overwhelmed. Having to host a dinner would be too much. And that is very relatable. I get that. And so Ryan's saying, like, what are some other ideas of how you can kind of share life so that people have a better understanding of what a family's life is on a day-to-day basis. So that could be a fun brainstorming activity there. Wally, yes.
Hi, Beth.
Hi.
I'm kind of coming from the other side. We're not denominational at my church. It's a very small family church, about 100 people. And we have members with disability in the family of our church. And we do everything together. If we have a cookout, everybody's there. It's like a family event. And if you, I guess, take that to a large church environment, think about it as a neighborhood. Everybody's having a barbecue. And then eventually 2 couples get together and have a barbecue together. And then it starts joining. It's a block party. The same thing for people with disabilities. If they're part of that body, part of that family, then it branches off and everybody starts to say, hey, we're all just one big family. We're all a part of this together, and we're all serving together and enjoying worshiping the Lord together.
I love that. Thank you. Diana.
Yeah, just jumping on about the parent input and the evening thing, and just an idea that we did or that worked really well. I would like to do it more, but it's hard because I come from a very large church, but is getting the senior pastor and arranging and taking parents out while the child is in school, treating them to a super, just relaxed lunch, not, super expensive or anything, but just letting them open up and pour into the pastor. And so their son wasn't there, but they were able to really communicate. And I think that made a really big impact, because I don't want to be the third person. I don't have special needs children, but to put him in there for an hour and a half with parents, and that was the sole point of the lunch, was just for him to learn from them, was amazing.
Yeah, I love that. So, and that plus that's kind of that relational aspect, like they really got to kind of get to know each other. That's really cool. And you're getting some shout outs in the chat for that idea. So let's see. Ryan.
Yeah, I feel like that relational thing is obviously super huge, because I know there are some, and I know there's horror stories, but I don't think there's a lot of pastors that straight up just don't want to help families with people with special needs or disabilities. But they're like overwhelmed by not knowing what they don't know. And so they hear things differently than what you're saying. So if you say, we want to welcome families with special needs to our church, they hear, we want to run, a special ed program at our church. And that's 2 very different things. And so they say, oh, we don't have the budget or the space or the people who are qualified to do that. But if it's just a matter of welcoming people to your church and you meet the people, it's impossible, I feel like, if you're a compassionate person, to just look someone straight in the eye and say, we don't want your family at our church. And I know it does happen, but I think that's a minority of pastors that would do that. And so helping get that like relational connection normalizes it in a way that makes churches and pastors much more willing to say yes to things when they know what they're saying yes to and who they're saying yes to.
Yeah, for sure. I like that. Thank you. And so that kind of brings me to one of the things I wanted to talk about. So some of the examples that we've been talking about today are what I would consider like churches that have, quote, a special needs ministry, which is awesome. And you can do some really, cool specialized things. I want to talk a little bit about, let's say you're not a church that has that necessarily. Hang on. But what are some things that, like the overall church, what are some characteristics that we might see? And I guess where I'm going with this, if all of us live long enough, at some point, as Dr. Lamar Hardwick says, we are going to be part of the disability community, right? If we live long enough. And so what are some of the things that your church can do that maybe don't cost money? Like, can we just shout out some of the things maybe that your church is doing? Like, for instance, our church offers, like our communion now is gluten-free. Like we've just made the decision 100% across the board, we offer our communions gluten-free. And that little step, that little change in how we do things has now made communion available to some folks who before could not participate because of, an allergy. I know that's like kind of a weird one, and yet it has created this welcoming environment for people who maybe otherwise wouldn't be able to participate. So any other examples? I have a couple other examples, but do you kind of know where I'm going with this? Anybody want to share? Yes, Wally.
Beth, I think it involves a conversation. I'm new to this office where I work, and we had to get to know each other. We're going to family retreat next week, and my boss knows that I don't like to wear t-shirts. She says, well, you can wear polo shirts. Just knowing each other, knowing how we interact together. And as your church body, you should know the members of your body. You should know what they like or dislike, if they're gluten-free or not. So it's just opening up that conversation, getting to know what other people are about.
It's again, that relational aspect. Yep, for sure. Another one that I'll throw out there, things like, there are some things that can be part of just the way you do your worship service. For instance, maybe it's not having like extreme lighting, like strobe lighting type things. It could be if you have like a slideshow kind of thing going on, you're very intentional about the fonts that you use or the colors that you use to make it easier to read, for folks with maybe learning differences or, some type of visual impairment. Like little things like that is kind of where I'm going with that. Any other thoughts there? Doc is saying offer sensory friendly services, especially at Christmas and Easter. Yep, for sure. And Florence, I'll go back to yours in a second. Your comment in the chat. We'll make sure that gets read. Anything else? I'm looking.
Wanted to throw out how important the sensory space is. Like my first encounter with kids with disabilities was when I was working as a youth pastor, and I started doing we had our main service on a Sunday morning, but we had a lot of kids that were coming to our Saturday night service and just going in with their parents. And so we started doing a small group, and because I didn't have any people helping me do it, we couldn't turn on the lights that we normally had on the stage, and we couldn't use the full sound system. So worship was me with the guitar, and teaching was sitting in a circle and talking. And that lower sensory environment accidentally created like a really great setting for kids.
I love it.
And so we had like half our group had autism, and I had no idea that we hadn't been welcoming to them. And that was really the thing that put it on my radar, that we'd been unintentionally making it hard for kids to come into our group. And so I really credit that accident as being the thing that made me aware of the ways that we were failing them, but also how little effort it took to get them to start coming once we started doing it on purpose, because we didn't invite it or advertise it as a special needs friendly or a sensory friendly thing, but they just started showing up because they could be there without getting overwhelmed.
Yeah, I love it. I love so many things about that. And you weren't out to create this big program or whatever. And that's part of what Florence has said in the chat was like, don't assume that every person with a disability wants to be placed into a segregated class space. And you weren't even trying to do that. But that by accident, because of not being able to do the big thing, you actually created this environment that was so much more user friendly for folks, and then that brought more people to you. So that's
yeah. Whoops! It's like some of the best accidents are good things, like chocolate chip cookies. No.
That's right. That's all right. I do know that story, and I do love chocolate chip cookies. One of the things that is. Oh, go ahead. Is that Robert?
I'm sorry, this is Bob. Yes, this is Bob. One of the things that really had benefited me and that it's no cost was to have the groups and the church email me things rather than printing them out, and then I could transfer it to my own format that benefited me. You know,
Yes.
they type it up, and why not email it to me? And I will say that as far as other group within Michigan that use Zoom, a lot of the pastors have realized that by sending out information to the people who are participating in Zoom and other online formats, that they didn't realize that there so many of their people within their congregation had visual impairments and difficulty reading, and that they were really benefiting from having things simply emailed to them. And it was, again, it's that low cost, free type of thing that you can do.
Yeah, that's great. And that's, again, that's kind of getting to know your congregation better. So Bob has been so helpful to me in learning about some of the, like the technology pieces and some of the very small adaptations you can make to make things like websites and that type of thing more accessible to folks with like disabilities, like vision impairment type things. So that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, wait, I had a thought, but let me read the chat first. So Florence has shared, you can have people volunteer to be a buddy to a child with disabilities so the parents get an opportunity to worship without worrying that the staff is not prepared to deal with developmental delays. And you can find free training too. And Doc mentioned that SOAR has training as well. Okay, here's the point I wanted to ask. So again, I told you, I picked this topic for selfish reasons. So I am inviting, I serve at, in addition to being with Key Ministry, I do serve at a church, and I'm inviting the church staff to a brown bag luncheon where we can just talk through some of these things, because I feel pretty strongly that being a disability inclusive, disability welcoming church is not just the job of the special needs ministry director, but it's the job of everybody. And we've kind of talked about that. And so I want to give them like some examples of what churches are doing, what churches can do. I want to kind of point out some of the things that our church, I think, does well. And I also want to talk about what should be on our website so that folks who are seeking a welcoming church, can say, oh, that's important to me. I mean, maybe it is the gluten-free communion, whatever. And so let's talk a little bit. One of my favorite things, I don't know why, but I'd love to talk about signage. So, and that's actually one of the questions that at Key Ministry we get asked a lot, like what signage should a church have, like for parking and everything. So I just want to talk a second about, like, enter your church as an outsider and try to picture, for those of you who are back in your churches, sorry, Sylvia, someday you'll be back there. But is it clear, like if you are somebody who has a mental health condition like anxiety, for instance, is it just completely too overwhelming to walk into your church building because you don't even know how to find the worship space or the restroom, and you would have to talk to somebody and you don't want to do that? Like, these are the kinds of things that are kind of easy fixes, but sometimes we don't think through. So does anybody want to speak to that? And Bob, I don't know, do you have your hand up or is that a leftover hand? I'm not sure. If your hand's up, go ahead and unmute.
Well, it's a leftover, but I think a quick way for people to evaluate things would be twofold. One, of course, you can go to the DOJ, the Department of Justice, and they do have a quick free download of the 703 checklist that you can do for your facilities, and that gives a great guideline as to the size of signs, where they should be located, that sort of thing, and that's a help. And the other thing would be to have someone with a disability go through and then make suggestions.
Yeah,
And
I think
we have
that's actually my
and I
favorite. Yeah, yep. So thank you, Bob, for bringing that up. So in addition to the Department of Justice website, I know Ability Ministry has a great checklist. I'm guessing Johnny and Friends probably has I'm looking at you, Wally. I'm guessing Johnny and Friends has a good checklist as well. But the second thing Bob said about having somebody with a disability go through, I did that at our church. And I mean, I know I've told this story before, but even the space where I met up with her was not appropriate for the type of wheelchair that she was in. And like, so right away, it was like, okay, I get it. We have some work to do here. What other like what else should I be chatting with our staff, my church staff with when we have our brown bag luncheon? Like what do you wish your church staff would talk about? Yes.
Virtual
Wally.
signage.
Oh, sorry.
Real quick, I wanted to add something about signage too. I come from an aviation background, and in an aircraft, you have 3 redundant systems. So if you're presenting something up on a screen, maybe something printed for those who would like to see it in a different category.
Mm-hmm.
Have a redundancy, duplicate things to make it more appeasable to those who are looking for something different.
Yeah, and so to Bob's point, one of the ways could be you've emailed it to them ahead of time. That could be one of the ways. Thank you. Ryan, did you have something?
I was just going to say virtual signage. Most people's first stop looking at a church is the website. And if there's not an indication of something about accessibility, they may just move on. I had a friend who's a manual wheelchair user. And when he moved to the area, he said, I just looked through churches. And if I didn't see them mention something about accessibility, I was like, why would I bother if I'm going to wind up coming to a curb that I can't get over to get into the sanctuary? So you don't know how many people visit your church and then leave without ever actually coming because there's not some sort of indication that they're not going to get turned away at the door or have an awkward experience, or, you know.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And, you know, it's free to put information on your website. So this is not a hard or costly, endeavor to make your website something that will, welcome individuals and families. Doc, do you have your hand up?
Yeah. So kind of piggybacking on that, yeah, it is surprising how many churches that offer a special needs ministry don't have anything on their website about it. So I'll second what Ryan's saying. Just even having a paragraph in, whether it be your children's page or your students page, is so vital, because otherwise it is. If it's not there, families just assume it's not there. The other thing that's important with signage, make sure people know what it is. So I'll use me, for instance, when SOAR was part of the church, I couldn't just say SOAR, because if someone just walked in off the street, they'd have no idea what SOAR was. So if you've named your ministry something, and many ministries give their special needs ministry a name, don't just call it that, but then also put special needs under it so they'll understand it. Or even if you call it, special friends, ministry, make sure you'll say special needs, just so that it is straight there, or disability, whatever you want to call it, so you can direct people to the right place. So we can't assume people know what we're calling things. We got to make it as simple as possible so that everyone sees. And then make sure you have, signs showing multiple. I agree, having the multiple signs, letting them see where everything is. But branding is great and it's all important, but sometimes it can kick us in the rear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure. Bob, is that a new hand or leftover?
This is Alan.
Oh, Alan. Hello.
Hi. I think in talking with your leadership, if they're implementing new software or new systems, whether it be projection equipment or web page updates, consideration should be made that they understand some of the web access guidelines and that they are aware of those kind of things. If you're creating an app, is it accessible to a person that's blind or otherwise? So if there's going to be an upgrade to any system, is it accessible? I'm blind, and there's no consideration given to system upgrades. And sometimes we may implement a system that actually prevents someone from accessing. I have a situation where if you use CCLI with your songs, for example,
Mhm.
text comes in a very vanilla form called a .txt format.
Okay.
By the time it gets put into the software for projection, it is no longer accessible. And for me, even to access the documentation that has the text, I had to hire someone to write an app so I could use that on my phone in the service.
Oh, wow.
So you sometimes create barriers that um, for a video intensive community is wonderful and looks beautiful, but in the process, we've eliminated a population.
Yeah, that's and it's, I know, and Bob will remember me saying this from a roundtable we did a while ago, but like people don't know what they don't know. And so nobody was, intentionally trying to make that happen. And yet because they didn't know, that kind of got lost along the way.
But also
go
that
ahead.
they may become defensive because they've invested several dollars,
Yeah.
maybe even thousands of
Yeah.
dollars. And the committee that's working on this feels threatened.
Mhm.
So, it makes it difficult in that regard too. Also, when I did bring a piece of equipment on my iPhone, because I had the documentation on my phone, whether it be sermon notes or whether it be text for a song, that um, that was seen as offensive, that I was playing with my iPhone in the church. And a person in charge of security came up to me, sat next to me to see what I was doing. And I knew exactly what this person was doing. I shook their hand. I said, "See my iPhone? You want to read with me the words together?" And so we sometimes can be intimidating if we don't understand what people are doing and technology that can be used for their assisting in including them.
Yeah. Wow. I would be shocked if somebody had, came over and questioned that. Wow. Along those lines, in the chat, Ryan has shared that Microsoft has some fantastic guidelines on accessible design for websites, and he shared the link in there. So you can go to Microsoft.com and probably search on accessibility resources.
And so does Apple.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And by the way, let me just say that both Microsoft and Apple have an accessibility helpline that you can call and they will help you. And I have both those numbers. And so if I have an issue because there's a software upgrade or whatever, they will assist and so on.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And, we did, I don't know, probably last year or so, I'm looking at you now, Catherine, a couple year or two ago, we did a roundtable on making your websites more accessible. I know I learned a lot that day. So there, you can go back in our archive and listen to that too, if anybody would like. What else? I'm scrolling through. So wave your hand wildly if you have something to say or unmute yourself.
I have another
go ahead.
thought. And the whole idea of disability etiquette,
Mhm.
I suppose I don't know if that can be overdone or not, but I think that needs to be something that maybe could be shared with your leadership, is how to inform leadership of different ministries and teachers and other staff members, volunteers and so on, just on general disability etiquette.
Mhm. Yeah, and I know, again, I'll look at Wally. Having served at a Johnny and Friends family retreat, I know there are some ministries who, like, this is part of what they do is, that type of training. Certainly involving, persons with disabilities to do the training is the best is the best ways for us to, again, get to know it. We've said that throughout this entire 45 minutes now is, getting to know people. And that's kind of, I think, the best way, to learn more about, how we're all honoring each other, is by getting to know each other. In the chat, Catherine has shared the link to, it was September 2020. And it was, the topic was, is your website as accessible as your ministry? And so that's when, I know Bob for sure was on there. And we had some of those conversations. Allison, your hand is raised. Hello.
Hi there. So I'm in Pennsylvania, and I was just sort of coming back to your original question about when you're going to sit down with colleagues. And I know over different times I've sat down with colleagues, and I know that a really helpful meeting that I had with our middle school and high school pastors was, and I included 2 parents. So that's what reminded me about talking about including not only people with disabilities, but also parents, was around behavior expectations. And I know that for my particular pastors at the time, it was their sort of nervousness about, what they could or couldn't expect of behaviors, and to have the parents there and say that, if you're going to have a scenario like this may happen, but this is what we would expect. And that was really, it was such a valuable conversation to have. And then I know it also led to good communication between the parents and the pastors going forward, that the parents had that understanding that, oh yeah, they do value my child. They do want my child to be part of the group. They may have had some anxieties or just, they're sort of feeling ill-equipped, but we've had these conversations, and then that led to other conversations, and just then dialogue with other parents of, yeah, my kid does that, and but it's okay. They're going to take it on. They know how to, or if they're not sure or something happens, they'll come back to me. So again, it's relational, as I know we talk about many times. And I was just very honored that those parents were very vulnerable and also shared great insight that I've been able to use in other capacities too.
I love that. So I love that you, didn't just say, okay, this is what it is, but you've actually involved all the parties, the people, and that's like such an honoring thing to do, I think. So that's very cool. Thank you for sharing that. We've talked a little bit about how our churches can be more accessible for those with vision impairments, or we talked a little bit about if a wheelchair user. I want to talk a little bit more about some of the hidden disabilities, like mental health conditions. And let's see if Catherine's still on here. There you, okay. I keep looking for your red wall.
I'm at my church today.
Yeah. Can you just share a couple thoughts on that, or maybe mention what we're going to be talking about, in the upcoming weeks that might be helpful for people to tune in?
Well, sure. Well, just to your second point. So next week, we're going to be talking about the important role of a mental health champion or liaison for your church. And this is basically just a point person who is passionate about, being inclusive for people that have mental health conditions or needs. It's mental health ministry is not necessarily even something that fits into as neat a box as special needs ministry, like Beth has in her church, and many of you probably have in your churches. So it's important to have somebody who's kind of paying attention to all the different things that are going on to be supportive of individuals and families that have mental health conditions. And then next month, one of the most helpful things that you can do to help people understand the struggle, and it ties in really nicely with what some of you have been talking about, having the senior pastor come over for dinner or meeting them for lunch, so that they can really see what your life is about. So it's very helpful to create a testimony video for somebody who has lived experience with a mental health condition. I'll just I have shared this example, I think, several times on Key Ministry social media with a gentleman who was, I've started a mental health support organization before I was with Key. And one of the gentlemen who was on the board of that organization has bipolar disorder. He's pretty significantly impacted. And anyway, so we did a testimony video for him. Had the benefit of somebody on staff at our church who was really an outstanding video auditor or editor. And so she created just this magnificent thing that told this beautiful story of the difficult things and the beautiful things in his life and where God was through the whole thing. And I tell you, I mean, there were not many dry eyes in our church, you know, after that little 5-minute clip that, you know, they were willing to share, you know, at the beginning of one of our services. And I mean, you know, if you can put a human face on any issue, it really can change your heart towards, you know, seeing what can be done versus just, you know, no, can't possibly go there. So anyway, we have the signups on our events page on Key Ministry website. So back to your question though, Beth, about hidden disabilities and things that can be done. You know, one thing that just instantly springs to mind is like with youth ministry is like environment. And this, you know, this is not an instantaneous quick fix, but decor, you know, like kids' classrooms tend to be like bright and cheery and have a gazillion things on the walls. And youth ministry can be like that too, or like, you know, the tons of flashing lights going on, you know, the fog machines, I mean, all those kinds of things. No, just cut to the chase, you know, dark walls with good lighting that focus on the stage. That can be really helpful in helping kids that have attention problems, you know, or have a lot of anxiety, not have so many things to try to be paying attention to at once. Or, you know, even kids on the high end of the autism spectrum, not having too many things to try to focus on at once. So just,
Yeah,
you know,
that's like Ryan's example. It's actually like less to do.
yes, yes. I mean, you know, and I come from a church that does not have special needs ministry per se. And I mean, it has really been encouraging all the things that we've done over the years that we've done well to be, you know, inclusive in this way. And that's one of them. Like our youth area, yeah, they've got like these walls in the back where the kids spray painted a bunch of different stuff and they signed the wall. And so that's all there. You know, it's not like they didn't get to contribute, but then the rest of the walls are black and the light just shines right on the speaker at the stage. So anyway.
All right, so those are some good suggestions. And so if anybody is interested in these are webinars that are coming up, these 2 webinars. So if you go to keyministry.org and it's on the events page, and you do need to register for each of those. So it's 2 separate registrations, but I highly recommend you join us for those. Florence is sharing a link and it's with, it's to a blog entry that she contributed based on a recent experience she had with her child. So it's at faams.org/inclusion. Well, and then the article is inclusion, why we don't see it. So we can check that out. Thank you for sharing that. All right, we're like out of time. Any last minute thoughts? Does this prompt you to do anything differently, or is there something that you know, you can take back to your church leadership, or did this prompt anything for anybody?
Can I make a suggestion for a future topic?
Yes, please.
Self-advocacy and leadership development for people with disabilities.
Okay, self-advocacy and leadership. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Well, that way the person with the disability is coming forward and saying what the problem is, rather than trying to guess what it is.
Mhm.
Allow that person. And I can say that if a person with a disability is in a leadership role, it tends to motivate the other people with disabilities as well. Thank you.
Right. That's great. Thank you. Yes, and you gotta shout out in the chat for self-advocacy. Thank you. Yes. And then, oh, Anna, is it Anna? Is the lead graphic designer at their church. Definitely going to be looking at our website and signage. Thank you for this input. Yeah, great. Very cool. All right, well, again, thank you. We will put this on the website along with, we have all of the previous editions of the Disability Ministry Video Roundtable. We will be back here on the third Wednesday of next month of July, and our topic is going to be reimagining and relaunching our ministries. So I know this has been like a very interesting time, and it's, with it being summer and coming out of COVID, it's a really good time to think about pretty much everything and start fresh. And so we're just going to share ideas for how we can do that. And some great chatting going on over here in the chat. So thank you all for being part of this discussion today, and we will see you next time.